Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave. This is Olive, and we talk about books and some other things. So it's been a minute again, but at least I kind of have a good excuse this time. So I didn't think we'd be gone that long, actually. So we were doing Horror Mayhem, and we did the first Horror Mayhem video of what we read in the beginning of May, and then I thought we were actually going to do another one before I went in for the surgery, and then when you're going to be down to you're going to be down to one arm for like a couple months. There's a lot to do. Yeah, I get a lot to prepare for that. So I just ran out of time. I got crazy busy, ran out of time, and then after the surgery, it's just like. It's just a pain in the ass doing everything with like one hand. It's hard to like get the energy up to just like you're trying to work from home. Just typing an email, like takes forever. And so anyway, so here we're back for sometimes people like the life updates. So for in case you're curious, the 30-second version is that yes, I had shoulder surgery. I had the same thing done on the elder shoulder like 5 years ago. It's the same suite of stuff. A rotator cuff muscle had to be repaired. You have like a bone up here. Rotator cuff muscles sometimes what helps them tear is rubbing against that bone, so they shave some of the bone down. It's common some of your bicep goes up in your shoulder, so to remove some of that irritation, they move the bicep. It's called a bicep tenodesis, where they like cut it up here and then move it down and attach it lower. And then there's your labrum, right? It's like a donut in the socket of your shoulder, and that a lot of people tear that, and it gets like ripped up over time and everything, and and then it becomes irritating. It gets like crab meat, so they go in there and like clear that out. So anyway, I had that suite of stuff done, and so that's just from getting old, and no injuries, just from getting old and abusing your body. So anyway, it went well, but I'll still be in a sling for just a little bit longer. And, down to one hand for a while. But we're back making videos. So we have been reading a lot because, we can't do any other activities. So we did. So we've read about your stuff. First thing we want to do is we want to tell you about the horror stuff, the rest of the horror stuff we read for Horror Mayhem in May. And then we'll tell you about the other books and some other things that we owe you after in subsequent videos. So this one's the horror. So we did, in the beginning of May, we kept pretty much on script of what our TBR was. The rest of it, we kept a little bit, just a little bit, and then we went off script, and we'll tell you about those. But that's typical for us. We don't necessarily stick to we did pretty good with the TBR, but we did veer off of it. So the first thing we did, which was on the TBR, and it was the next scheduled thing, was we read The Omen by David Seltzer. So I know many people have read this, but we had not. And so had not seen the movie either. So this is a novelization of the 1976 movie, The Omen. And are you okay? What's the matter? I can't mess around too much. You got to be careful not bump my shoulder, Bubs. Okay, so Seltzer wrote this novelization he wrote the screenplay for the movie, and Seltzer wrote this novelization, which was actually released shortly before the movie to try to buzz up, create interest in the movie, and it worked. I mean, it was a huge seller, and what this story. So it was this is a novelization of that original 1976 movie. There was a whole franchise now. There was a bunch of subsequent movies, including a remake of the original movie in 2006, I believe. Even a couple TV shows. And even very recently, I think 2024, they did a new prequel, called The First Omen, I think it was called. I've heard that Omen 3 is a stellar movie, even if you don't watch any of the others. I haven't yet watched it yet, but let us know if you guys, those of you, and I know some of you have watched all these Omen movies, tell us which ones are worth watching, because we'll probably watch some more. So, yeah, so first what we did was we read the book. And if you're not aware of this story, briefly, what this is about is it is about this boy, Damien. So it starts out in the very beginning. The main character in this book is Jeremy Thorne. The names differ slightly in the movie than in the book, but in the book it's Jeremy Thorne, and he's an American diplomat. He's like 2 steps away from the presidency, basically. Very important guy politically. And his wife, Catherine. And Catherine, they live in Rome. He's an ambassador. They live in Rome, and she has one night, she gives birth, and when he gets there, he's informed by like the chaplain, I guess, of the hospital that his wife lost the baby, but there was another baby that was born that same night, and this priest convinces Thorne to take this other baby and tells him it's kind of like, it was like divinely, it basically divinely influenced, and that that he was brought a son that night anyway, and that they don't even need to tell the wife Catherine. They could just pretend this is the son. So that's what they do. He's a little reluctant, and that's what they do. So that all happens right in the beginning. Most of the what's up? Most of the whoa. Okay, I'm sorry. Most of the somebody's very anxious for pick me ups tonight. So most of the story takes place a little bit later that child's name is Damien, and most of the story takes place a little later when Damien's like 5. And so, of course, I'm not gonna say who Damien supposedly is. I think most people probably know, but just for those that are interested in reading this, I'll just refrain. But let's just say that bad things start to happen to people around Damien. So very early, I'm not going to give away the story, but very early, it's critical to summarizing the plot. Very early, something happens to his nanny, and so he gets a new nanny who's just like this Mrs. Baylock, who mysteriously appears, and so she's there, and there's this massive black dog that shows up that is very protective of Damien, and so Mrs. Baylock is very, very interested in Damien, and so all of this bad things keep happening around Damien. All of this, you kind of follow these different paths in the story. You're following Catherine some, where she starts to become very distraught over everything that's happening, and has to go see some doctors some, and meanwhile our main character, Jeremy Thorne, he ends up doing some reluctantly doing some investigating into what's happening. He kind of teams up with this photographer called in the book he's Haber Jennings, and this guy takes like a bunch of photographs, and he's kind of following them around. Thorne is like a big figure, and he's kind of following them around, and when he takes these photographs, there's like these weird shadows in the photographs, which really piques his interest. So the two of them kind of team up, and they go and they go talk to some other people. They talk to different priests. I won't give it away. So they talk to different priests, investigate some shady goings on, in the church, and I'll just leave it to that. I'll leave it at that. But I really, really liked this book. Actually, really, really liked it. I had a great time with it, and it was, Seltzer did a great job with the novelization of. I mean, it was a screenplay, but I'm just saying, putting it in novel form, it was super, super readable, and really liked it. We then watched the original movie that it was based on afterwards, which we had not seen. Same year, 1976, and we liked that not as much. So, I mean, it was good for what it was. We obviously already knew the story, and obviously there was a lot less in the movie. So, the movie just, having read the novelization first, the movie just felt like not a lot was happening. And it was also from 1976, so those movies are just obviously a lot less loud and action-packed, and just the cinematography is not the same thing, and so it wasn't like it wasn't super riveting. The novel did add some things. It added some a bit about these different priests and things that were involved in everything that happened. So I'm tempted to say more, but I won't say more. And so we did like the book, right? We liked the book a bit more than the movie. But, if you're reading this book, you kind of have to watch the movie as well. So the movie was fine. It just, didn't knock our socks off. So, but yeah, well, highly recommend this if you haven't read it. This was really, really good. It was really good, and it really moved. So I had a good time with that one. Okay. Then next, we had in the beginning of Horror Mayhem, we were going to finally read The Walking Dead. And we did read that. We read like the first trade volume, like the first 6 issues. We had to, so we were hoping to read more of that before we went in for the surgery. We didn't get to it, and after the surgery, we couldn't do that anymore because the rest of it we only had in a massive. I don't have it down here, but there's one there. There's volume 2. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a massive compendium, and I can't hold that with one hand, like reading that, for long. So instead, we switched off to a different horror graphic comic, and that is this. We read Nazi Zombies, because this we had in single issue form. There's only 4 issues in this series, and this came out in 2012. And this was not very good, actually. It was, so this is by, what is it, White? Joe White, and I don't know. I don't even know if the art was all the same person, but so this is a series from 2012, and we had picked this up. We're a little disappointed because actually the series is worth some money. We got lucky, found it in the wild, but it's worth some dough if you try to go get this online. But it wasn't very good. The art was good. It's black and white. The art was good, but the story was, so it's about Nazi zombies, and the premise is that, back, what's the matter? Back during the World War, the Third Reich would, take the killed dead soldiers and bring them back for experiments, and created this super soldier force, made of zombies, of course, that like couldn't be killed. And what's the matter? But you're very fidgety tonight, and so it was kind of like I don't have flashbacks of reading like the Sergeant Rock comic as a kid. It was kind of like just a military diary almost sort of thing. And it followed a couple different stories. Each comic, except the last one, that was all one group. But the first 2, they kind of followed, there would be like 2 stories. The first 3 issues, they would each have like 2 stories, and they'd be following 2 different groups of soldiers that were encountering these Nazi zombies. So you kind of just follow the squad, and they would encounter some of these. But it wasn't that exciting, and there wasn't even a lot of gore or anything happening, so it was kind of, it wasn't that great, so, but interestingly, I discovered that Sergeant Rock also has, I think, like a sort of Nazi zombie series, so I'll have to look into that, because I remember liking Sergeant Rock as a kid. I don't know, any of you guys read Sergeant Rock as a kid and like it? I'm really dating myself now, that's pretty old school. Okay, and then, and so we continued our off-script escapade, and we read just because we had found this in the wild, and it looked cool. This is Darker Places by Park Godwin, sorry. So this was published in 1973. We had never heard of it before until we saw it out in the wild, and I think I got this one right before the surgery, because I went and picked up my daughter from college just days before I went in for the surgery, and so my favorite used bookstores up there, and so I think I saw it that time, so I think I got it right, like during Horror Mayhem. I think that's what happened. So anyway, so I was excited because I just picked it up. It sounded cooler than it was, so, and it actually ended up being a little more, I mean, it was a horror, but it was more thriller than horror, I guess, more mystery than horror. And so it follows this guy Neil, and he separates from his, I guess, wife. It's like his girlfriend, but they had like their own little sort of like private little pseudo ceremony sort of thing. So I think they quote unquote got married, but they were not really. And anyway, then they separate. And it's something he regrets. And our main character Neil, ends up going to a different city. They're both into acting. They're both actors, and so he's in a different city doing his acting. And while he's away, he uncovers that his wife / girlfriend Kit has been killed. And so he's basically, this story follows the investigation of that, and her death was a violent death. She's like, it's this like weird stake through the heart, and she seemed to have been killed in a, in a violent sex cult ritual, right? So it sounded pretty, it sounded pretty wicked, right? And but that's sorry, Olive's sister's over there is bugging at the door. So that's it was so he's investigating that, and so there's a couple other characters in there. There's friends that he had left in that city. His good friend Mick, whose wife she had passed away, and so Mick is himself, going through some difficult times. But he's not trying to be a good friend to Neil. When Neil's back, trying to figure out what happened with Kit, and so he's doing some investigating. There's a lot of references to the theater, and hold on one second. Oh, sorry about that. I had to go get Olive's sister, Riley. I think I hurt myself when I did it. Okay, so this, so he's investigating what happened to Kit, and Mick is around helping him, and there's another, there are other people that he knew kind of tangentially, and there's a lot of references to the theater, and this mysterious, he's looking at her writings, and this mysterious white rosary book that is related to this, and so it was not as exciting and scandalous as the jacket made it sound. It was, the ending was kind of subpar. So I will say that the book was very readable. I kind of, I was engaged in reading it the whole time, which is worth some. Maybe I just soured a little bit with the payoff at the end. Not that it was horrible, but it was just, I was expecting there to be a lot more to it. I was expecting it to be a more complex plot, with these rituals and this, all this, like, just expecting a lot of, like, ritualistic sadomasochist sort of stuff, and they're just like, there wasn't a whole lot to that. So it was a little disappointing, but we didn't DNF it. It was, like I said, it was very readable. So it was okay. It was okay. It was probably just really the end that soured me, but it was yeah. So it was what it was. There was a lot of just not even so much literary references, I guess, but just references to plays and stuff, which I wasn't all that familiar with. You know what I mean? So that kind of detracted a little bit from it. But if you are, then that would add something to it for you, I guess. Okay, so that's that one. Then we also continuing off script, we read a couple of really short books from this series, and Randy. So this was on Amazon Prime. These are Amazon originals. It's a collection called the Shivers Collection. So if you have Amazon Prime, you can read these for free. And it's a set of 5 super short books. I don't know if you'd call them novelettes. You read them each in like about an hour, and so they're very short. And we got turned on to this because one of our co-hosts for Horror Mayhem, we will list the co-hosts below, even though we're far out of May now. We'll list all the co-hosts below. But Randy Ray, the literate Texan, he was put up that he was going to read one of the books from this called Jackknife by Joe Hill. And we like Joe Hill, and so we're like, oh cool. And so we looked into it, and we ended up reading a couple of these. We didn't read the whole collection, but we read a couple. So I'm going to tell you them in order of what we liked. So the one we liked them all, but the one we liked the least actually was Jackknife by Joe Hill. And this followed a guy. I can't say much about each one because they're very short. So very quickly, Jackknife was about a guy that he was kind of he was down on his luck now because he had a little bit of a scandal he's a professor, and a scandal with one of his students. I don't think anything physical happened with her, from what I recall. This is a while ago now that we read this, but I think it was just like sexting and stuff like that, and clearly it had become inappropriate between the professor and the student, and so and then it was uncovered, and and his wife found out, and so I think she kicked him out. And he was living, I don't know where this was he was living. I don't know if it was an Airbnb. It was somewhere else. Now. I don't know if it was an Airbnb or another place that they had something. And so he was elsewhere, and he's going through the woods, and he finds this old, crooked tree with a jackknife in it. With I think it was a note. I don't know if they were carvings, but I think it was a note that was jammed into the tree. And he's so this guy, he feels sorrier for himself than he should, and so you're following, it's sort of two things: the story of him with this student, and then him with this jackknife. And he likes a jackknife, so he takes the jackknife out of the tree, which he shouldn't have done, because the jackknife is kind of like what is binding the tree, and he's gonna, and this is all cool, and this is gonna be like his comeback, to get over the scandal, and so it's kind of like it's I guess it's like a little bit of a metaphor, this tree thing. This is a guy who's always like, he he's a victim, and to himself he's a victim and deserves more and has been unfairly treated, and so what happened with school now is happening the same thing with this tree. He's trying to, he takes this knife that he wants, and he's going to exploit this for what he wants, and he shouldn't have done that, because that jackknife is there for a reason. I'll leave it at that. That's too much already. So okay, then the next one we read, which we liked a lot better, was called The Letter Slot. So this is by Owen King, who is Joe Hill's brother, another one of Stephen King's sons. So The Letter Slot by Owen King this is about a boy who's it's just him and his mom. His father died, and him and his mom really is like, really does everything she can for him, struggling to make it work, but she has health problems, and she's struggling through it working. And so he, one day on the way home from school, I guess, walking home from school, there's this old house, and he starts putting, and it's vacated. It was like a demonstration house, for real estate development. And he puts a note in the letter slot. And sure enough, this empty house mysteriously he responded to. I think the letter comes to his house. I think it ends up on his bed. I think he finds a response letter on his bed, if I recall correctly. But in any event, he gets a response letter at his house, and it's very sympathetic, very kind, voice, and they want this response. This person that's responding wants to give him some luck. So all he needs to do is write down a person that he hates. Our main character needs to write down a person that he hates and put that back in the letter slot, and then he'll get some luck. And that begins, this escalating sort of sequence of things. So it was good. It was good. We liked it. But our favorite, when the last one we read from that collection, there's a couple more that we didn't read, but the last one was The Blanks by Grady Hendrickson. And this was creepy. This was the creepiest of them all. So this is about a family. It's mostly told I guess it's all told from the perspective of the mom, where the family goes on vacation every year to this island called Jekyll Island with a bunch of other families that all hang out together, vacation together here and everything, And but there are other things that live on this island. It's like the wonderful vacation spot, but there are other things there that they have to ignore. And as long as they just ignore these other things, everything will be okay. And so that ends up one summer not happening for her son, and so it leads into a bunch of things. It's a little bit of a commentary too, social commentary, on what what things you're willing to sacrifice, what's important, and when will other people, stick by your side, all these sort of like, friends and acquaintances, friends of convenience that you may have. And so it was pretty good on multiple levels. It was definitely creepy. It was scary. So we definitely recommend that one. So yeah, so if you have Amazon Prime, you can read these for free. on Amazon Prime. So, and then that was it. That brought us to the end of our horror. So we had mentioned some other horror in our TBR. We didn't get to those, obviously, because we went off script. But we weren't super excited for those last things, so which I guess is why we went off script. So that's it. You have anything else to add, Olive? She snagged the rest of the pick me ups when I got up before, so there's none left. Sorry, you ate them all. So anyway, thanks for being patient with us, guys. So we're back. Hopefully we're not going to be in the sling much longer, but we're out and about now. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again very soon. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.